I'm from Innovate UK, as you've heard, formerly the Technology Strategy Board. Now, we're a public sector organisation, so we're spending taxpayers' money, and we sit in Swindon alongside the research councils, but we're not a research council. We fund and support business innovation, so that's very much helping businesses to find new ideas, solve problems, in order for businesses to grow and to grow the UK economy. But for us, and for all of us, the academic community are really important for that business innovation. Where does business look for its new ideas? It can find new ideas in other businesses, in its supply chain, in its competitors, in its customers, but primarily finding those ideas in the academic community. So my current role at Innovate UK as Head of Research Engagement is to make sure that the work we do is very much dovetailed, is very much hand in hand with the organisations that fund the academic research. So with the research councils, such as NERC, with the funding organisations, the charities and other government departments. And we're particularly interested in the UK. We're looking at growing the UK economy, but that doesn't mean that we're not interested in abroad. We're very interested in helping people to access and find the right European funding, and we're very interested in businesses from abroad who want to come and work here in the UK. But I think you can see from my slide, and I hope you can, trying to illustrate there that I'm actually one of you at heart. I started off as a physicist, but I spent a lot of my career as an environmental policy consultant, working for government to advise on policy development, implementation, evaluation, and going around that virtuous circle of looking at what the problems are, what the policy responses might be. Once they've been implemented, have they worked, have they delivered the outcome desired, and if not, what do you do about it? I've worked in the public and the private sector. I've run a business within the private sector. But for 9 years before I joined TSB, as it then was, I ran the Knowledge Transfer Partnerships programme, which probably some of you are familiar with. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is share with you some of the things I learned particularly from that time, but also from my career working at that interface between academia, business and government about collaboration and what it involves. So what I'm going to talk about is collaboration, why it's important to us as a nation, but why it's important to you as academics, what some of those challenges and rewards might be, but also tell you a little bit at the end about what Innovate UK can do to help you in that collaboration. So just to look at it from what we would call the strategic point of view, there have been a lot of reports coming out of government recently. When I prepared this presentation at the time, the report over there, which we refer to as the Terra Alice report, produced by a lady called Terra Alice, recognised the importance of science and innovation. And other reports and reviews since have articulated that importance of both science and innovation together being at the heart of UK economic growth. And we see that very much as hand in hand. It's not just the science, it's not just the innovation, it's not just what you do within academia, it's not just what happens in business. It's actually that hand in hand and getting that working properly together that's important. But it is a very complex environment when you look at it. There's lots of different people who get involved there. I've mentioned the research councils, 7 of them. There's 4 funding councils if you look across the whole of the UK. There's many government departments, many charities. There's ourselves. There's local enterprise partnerships. There's other local activity that supports innovation and supports research. And so we're very aware that to help people find their way through that is complicated. And at lunchtime I heard a conversation between a lady from Liverpool University and my colleague Ian Holmes from Innovate UK, thinking about how do you navigate the path to access the right European funding. We know none of it's easy, but part of the role of Innovate UK is to provide the routes through that, to help you to find the people to talk to help to find the routes through that and to find the connections that you need. We can't make it any less complex, but we can help to find the way through it. Although, to be fair, we are trying to make it less complex. Another very important piece of work that came out just before Christmas was the Science and Innovation Strategy. Now, I don't expect any of you have read that quite as often or quite as thoroughly as I have, but it has been a really important piece of work for us and for the academic community as well. And again, reiterates science and innovation at the heart of long-term economic growth. But it also draws out some really interesting evidence, both from the point of view of academia, but also the point of view of business. Businesses that invest in research and other forms of innovation have higher productivity, create high-quality jobs, and are more likely to export. Now, if you've been listening to what's been said since yesterday's budget, productivity is an issue for the UK. We haven't had historically high productivity in comparison to our competitor countries. So actually being able to help businesses to increase their level of productivity as well as create jobs and exports is really important. We're all taxpayers. We all have an interest in that. A third of the productivity growth that took place between 2000 and 2008 was attributable to changes in technology resulting from science and innovation. And the investment that we at Innovate UK and before us the TSB put in to support business-led innovation has generated £3 to £9 additional gross value add per pound invested. We do a lot of evaluation, we produce a lot of evidence to support that. And businesses receiving a grant spend 30% more on R&D and 30% more likely to employ STEM graduates. So there's a lot of evidence that innovation and collaboration with the academic community to help businesses to innovate and grow is really delivering a change for the economy. So I think my message from these slides is it's important, it really matters. And I know probably most of you have been involved in the REF and all the REF impact case studies that we're going to be mining like there's no tomorrow for the examples of how the research that you've all been doing has led through then to impacts on the economy and onto the business community. The Research Council similarly, and we're going to be using those case studies extensively to illustrate that point. And so really just reiterating some of these examples, but also thinking a little bit more from the business point of view. If you collaborate, if you have partners, you can leverage some investment from those partners into the research environment, and it can also be a route to employment. I've already mentioned productivity and growth, but if you look globally, the innovative economies are more competitive, they respond better to change, and they see higher returns on investment and increased living standards. And we can make the UK more attractive for companies from outside the UK to come and locate here. And there are a lot of universities across the country that have really significant international businesses who have deliberately come and located in this country because of the quality of the research that they find here and the partnerships they can build. And that's good for the economy, and it's good for jobs, and it's good for the opportunities and the research investment. So why should you collaborate? I mean, we're telling you it's a good thing, it's good for the economy, it makes everybody feel good, and we think it'll help to make us more wealthy. But if you actually look at what it can mean for you in your daily life, in your day-to-day job, it gives you the opportunity to go out there and take the outcomes of your research and to test it in a different environment, in a real-world environment. And certainly talking to my colleagues from NERC and the NERC scientists I've worked with in the past, and indeed I was one of the private sector people who was using NERC science, it helps you to access databases and data sets that you can't necessarily access from where you are in your university environment. Because quite a lot of organisations in the private sector are collecting data. The work that they do develops data sets. And it can give you access to that in a way that perhaps you can't get that at the moment. You can get out there and actually see what people are doing with your research. And I know from first-hand experience working with the KTP programme, the inspiration that can give you for new ideas to take back into your research, perhaps for new projects, to how you're going to evolve your current projects. And it might also bring funding to support that, because if you're working with a partner out there in the private sector, in the third sector, charities, within social enterprises, you can see new opportunities, new challenges, which are just as intellectually challenging and intellectually demanding as the others that you might generate internally. It also will help you to see the sort of people that the business community is wanting to recruit, the sort of skills and expertise that they're really wanting to see in the graduates coming out of universities now. And to be honest, apart from anything else, what I hear most from people is it's actually really good fun. I was with a group of academics from my old department in Oxford trying to persuade them to do this, and somebody was being really quite reluctant and saying, I'm terribly busy, I've got an awful lot of research to do. And his colleague, the head of department, who had actually done a lot of collaborative work himself, he just turned and he said, look, aside from any of the other arguments, it's really just great fun to get out there. So give it a go, see how you feel about it. Something else I'd just like us to reflect upon is what collaboration is really all about. Because there are lots of different ways of describing it and thinking about it. At the end of the day, it's about people. And we talk about collaboration, we talk about building partnerships. And this is something I've thought about quite a lot recently, and we've had some work done in it for us. In our everyday life, we don't really use that term partnership lightly. If you talk about working in partnership in a research environment, you really shouldn't take it any more lightly than you would in your personal life. If you're going to refer to somebody as a partner, you really need to develop a good level of trust. You need to be honest, you need to be candid, you need to be frank. But you need to be willing to compromise as well. You need to be willing to make sure there's something in it for them as well as something in it for you. You need to invest some time and effort in really understanding what you're wanting to get out of it, but also what you're going to put into it, and when and how you're going to put into it, so that you don't have any misunderstandings as you go along the way. So I think what I'm saying here is invest some time in at the beginning. It's not just about getting the forms filled in, getting the project plan, giving everybody their appropriate role on the team. It's investing that time to really develop that relationship. And what I would call it's engaging. It's not just communicating, it's not just sending papers and going and speaking to people. It's actually properly engaging with them. And making sure that if it's a success, you've all agreed what will make it a success. So you know what they're looking for and they know what you're looking for, and that you each respect that. Something else that we hear a lot about as well, particularly when you're working with business, but I think it applies equally in the other direction, is a term called absorptive capacity. Now, the consultants who work with us who started using this, we said, don't use that. We don't know what it means. Please explain. Actually, if you read the Science and Innovation Strategy, that talks about absorptive capacity. So this is a term that is starting to get some currency. But what does it mean? If you look at a business who's perhaps working with you as academics, when we're talking about absorptive capacity, it's really their ability to take in that knowledge, that expertise, that know-how that you're talking to them about, that you're trying to communicate to them, and knowing how to take it into their organisation, assimilate it, making it a part of what they do, communicate it to each other and share it, to move away from the concept that knowledge is power. You know, I work with some really important academics from Sheffield and I'm really clever, so I'm not going to tell my colleagues all about it. It's not that. It's actually, I do work with some really clever academics from Sheffield, and I know an awful lot now because they've helped me to learn it. And I think it could be really helpful to another department in my organisation. And actually, if we change the way we did things, we could use that knowledge more, and we might work with them again, and there might be other things we might want to do. So it's developing a different way of working so that the businesses and the academics or the charities or the people in the social enterprises feel comfortable working with you on an ongoing basis, and they know how to use that knowledge and expertise that you're helping them to develop. And it can be different according to the different organisations you work with. So a very large company will probably already have a really good absorptive capacity. They've been working with academia for a long time. They probably do their own research. But it's going to be really different if you're working with a small company, and sometimes with the social enterprises and charities, because they may not have done this before. They may not have any academics, any graduates amongst their employee community. So they may not be used to working with you. So you may have to invest a little bit more time in helping them to develop it. But it is absolutely key to really delivering the impact and the outcomes that we need for the economy. And so, as I've mentioned, I think there are some ground rules to think about when you're starting to collaborate. Make sure that you do resolve those differences early on, that you recognise there are differences in culture. You're looking for different things, you work at a different pace. I'll be absolutely honest with you, I looked at the leaflet that gave the timeline on the case studentships, and I noticed it was 18 months from first discussing the idea to the student starting the work. And I looked at that from the point of view of the private sector, and I thought, oof, if I've got a really pressing problem and I'd like to use your academic expertise to help me solve that, I'm not sure I can wait 18 months to get that started. So some of these things you need to think about are, what does business actually need? Sometimes they do have a longer term strategic problem where they're really happy to work on a longer time scale. But actually they're really worried about how they're going to pay people at the end of this month. And what's the balance in the bank going to look like at the end of the year? And what are they going to tell their shareholders? So you'll find them pushing you, and they'll be pushing you hard on time. But the quicker you can respond, the more responsive you can be to their needs, the better the rapport that you'll build with them, because you'll be helping them. You need to think about the different languages. You will use language differently from people in business using language. I don't want to give specific examples because it can be misleading, but be careful to test the language that you're using and that they're using. You know, have I understood you correctly? Is this what you mean? And building that trust is really important. Making sure, as I say, that there are mutual benefits, knowing who's doing what the inputs are, and what the shared priorities are. And again, as I say, knowing what success looks like and how you will all recognise it. What matters to you, because what matters to you may not matter to them, and vice versa. But it's respecting that that's important. So how do we at Innovate UK help? And I'm not going to give you a long talk on all of these, but what we have here, and ignore the escalator, we could argue all afternoon about where on the escalator anything goes. But down at the bottom here, we've got innovation vouchers. Now they're a £5,000 voucher, and we give those to businesses. But we know that a lot of those businesses spend that £5,000 in the academic community to buy a bit of academic time, perhaps where the business hasn't ever worked with somebody from a university before, and it helps to just have those initial conversations, maybe do a little bit of work to explore the challenge and the problem that they've got. And we've recently pointed them to the fact that they can use that to buy some time on equipment that you have in the university and the support that might be necessary. So you might have equipment there that a business would really benefit from, and they can use the voucher for that and to get a little bit of support in helping them understand the data and whatever they get out of that. I'm going to jump to KTP, the one that I know absolutely inside out and find really difficult to do anything and not talk about, which is a brilliant scheme. Again, brings a business and an academic together in partnership with an associate who's a recent graduate who acts as the conduit between the academic team and the business team to help that business develop its own new capability. They've been going for 40 years, and at the highest number we had about 1,500 projects going across the country. Really well worth having a look at, and are great in terms of a career path for people coming out at any level, first degree, master's, PhD, looking for a business career. The catalysts. Now we run the catalysts in partnership with the research councils. We put some funding in, they put some funding in, and they are a funding stream to help to take ideas through from a completely solely academic project through a series of different project types until it may be a completely business-led project. With the academics and the business people working in collaboration at different stages as they go through that. Industrial biotechnology, we have a catalyst. We have a catalyst in energy. We have one in partnership with the Medical Research Council, and we're looking at that tool to see how we can use it more extensively. The idea is to accelerate the emergence of these ideas from the academic environment. And the Innovation and Knowledge Centres, again, we run those in partnership with the research councils. It was initially an EPSRC idea, and they're located at a particular university. But again, the intention is to start to commercialise the research where there is an institution that has some really leading research in a particularly important area, to help to bring businesses in to inform that research as it's going on within the university, but then progressively to help to take those ideas out and apply them commercially in the business community. Collaborative R&D sort of is what it says on the tin. R&D projects where we look for a collaboration between the lead partner, the business, potentially other businesses and academics. And we've recently had an evaluation done of collaborative R&D, and it shows that on projects that have 2 or more academic partners within that collaborative team, the return on investment that delivers is more than twice as much as projects that have no academic partner. And I think that's a real accolade for the contribution and the value that you can contribute. Catapults, I hope you're becoming familiar with. These have been introduced most recently since the Hauser Review, and we have 7 at the moment, and I think it's 3 more we've just announced. These sit between academia and business, where there is a major opportunity for the UK to build real capability and real presence, and to scale up ideas from research laboratory scale to real production scale, and to challenge some of those real strategic difficulties that an individual business alone, even a large multinational, can't address on their own, but also to provide facilities and infrastructure that businesses can access easily and readily. And I and my team are working with the Catapults now to really enhance the way that they're working across the academic community. We want them to work with all the universities that are relevant to them and build those relationships. And the research councils are working with us, and some of them are developing fellowships for people to go into the Catapults and spend time there. We're looking at opportunities for people from Catapults to come into the universities and to really enhance that people flow between the universities and the Catapults. And then I think the final one is our Knowledge Transfer Network, the KTN. And I'd really strongly encourage you to join that, get involved with it. Go onto our website and look for _connect and join the KTN. And this is all about building communities, building networks, helping people to find the partners that they need, and working with our other innovation networks. Ian's here, he's a national contact point. We've also just won the contract for the Enterprise Europe network, which we're delivering across the UK. And so we're building this innovation network of people across the country who can help you to find partners, to find funding opportunities, to understand how you can apply for different funding opportunities, to build those networks and connections. So a real opportunity for you to get involved there. So I hope I've given you a bit of a feel of the things I've learned from 30 or more years working at this interface between academia, business and government, all of which speak different languages, all of which have different cultures. But actually, if you can cross those interfaces and work collaboratively, it's hugely rewarding. And I think for your research, you'll find it adds an extra insight, an extra excitement, and an extra reward to what you're doing. So thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to talk this afternoon. I'm sorry I'm going to have to rush off, and I know we haven't got questions. But if anybody wants to get in touch with me, there you go. So thank you very much.